Well, hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us on the live stream. We are excited to have another conversation of where are they now. We are following up with a patient who's been a past patient of ours several years ago. It was fun. We all got a kind of chance to hear Brad retell his story again at a recent leadership meeting. And I said, you know what, we got to get Brad on the live stream and have this conversation together. So we got some of Brad's team that he worked with when he was a patient at Mary Free Bed. Let's just go around the circle here on the live stream and introduce ourselves, and then we'll jump into Brad's story. So, Brad, if you want to start, just tell me, where you live, what you're doing for work right now, and then just the shortest little bit, like when you were a patient at Mary Free Bed.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate it. So thank you for having me and for being here. So my name's Brad Mathis, born and raised here in Grand Rapids, and I'm currently working at Rockford Construction, Senior Vice President, and I've been here for just over 10 years. I was here when I was actually initially admitted into Mary Free Bed after 3 years. After 3 months in the intensive care unit at Corwell. I was then transferred to Mary Free Bed in 2020, 2020, and then was of December, and then was discharged in January of 2020. So just over 3 to 4 weeks.
And then Molly, why don't you introduce yourself, what your role is here at the hospital?
Yep, I'm Molly Bennett. I am a respiratory therapist here at Mary Free Bed, and I am also the respiratory therapy supervisor.
Awesome. And we're going to definitely talk about your team here. Chris, if you want to go next, tell me your position and maybe also how long you've been working at Mary Free Bed.
Sure. Yeah. My name is Chris Bohr. I'm a physical therapist. I've been at Mary Free Bed for about 12 years inpatient here on the main campus for about 10. And I am the team lead. I'm on the medically complex team, and we are the therapists that get to work with patients like Brad, our cardiopulmonary patients, our post-transplant, and our ventilator patients. And we were really excited to see Brad. It was such a treat to see him walk up on stage, and I'm like, I know that guy. And, yeah, I mean, it's the pictures that you have that we're going to be able to see later are just impressive. What a exciting thing to see it come full circle and see you back out working in the community again. And had the privilege of working with Terry and Molly and all the other nurses on the IMRU. But yeah, great.
Awesome. Terry, why don't you tell us about yourself? What part of the hospital you work in and how long you've been working with us?
All right, I'm Terry Muldemo. I'm an occupational therapist on the medically complex team. I started on just within a month of when Chris did, so about 12 years. It's just great to see you, Brad. Great to see you doing so well, and looking forward to catching up.
Yeah. So, Brad, tell us, a little bit about your journey. I always like to hear what life was like before your illness, so that we kind of set the stage where you were living your life to the fullest before this some crazy thing happened. Why don't you walk me through a little bit about your story and what you're doing?
Right, sure. Well, I'm 55 now, and I mean my entire life. So this was 5 years ago. So up until age 50, I was essentially as healthy as it gets. It's 175 pounds. You can see there I had played sports growing up and everything, and so even playing soccer with my daughter who's now 27. So everything had really been going according to quote life's ideal plan for the most part. So community, family, life, church. And then in essentially the summer of 2019, I really started losing a fair amount of weight awfully quick and didn't exactly know what was going on. And before I know it, then started also having a lot of muscle weakness and ended up getting initially admitted into St. Mary's Hospital. And they had run some scans and identified that I had a mass that was actually in my chest, which was about the size of a grapefruit and was attached to my upper left lung, attached to a part of my heart, as well as some nerves. In addition to that, they had diagnosed me with two diseases. One is myasthenia gravis, and then the other one was a dermatomyositis, which is basically your body starts to attack muscle cells. So long story short, they really had to do surgery to get that mass out first and foremost. And so they transferred me over to Corwell to their heart center because that's how complicated the surgery was. And they ended up doing the surgery on October 10th I'd lost so much weight that once I got over to Corwell, they actually had to put me on a ventilator so I could start to get a bit more strength associated prior to the surgery. It was about a 6-hour surgery, and they did take out the mass and everything, but they also ended up taking out my upper left lung, a little piece of my heart to some extent, and then some nerves, one which went through my vocal cord and another one to my diaphragm. So my left vocal cord was then paralyzed, as well as my diaphragm. And so it was a pretty complicated, again, 6-hour surgery, but with a lot of love and support and expertise from the medical team, I did eventually get stronger and in the ICU unit at Corwell, but I was also still on incubated, so on a breathing uh, ventilator as well as a feeding tube, and so but at Corwell, in terms of the intensive care unit, I was still healthy enough, so to speak, that I could no longer stay in the intensive care unit. And so Mary Free Bed, during the last few weeks of my stay, of my 3-month stay at Corwell, Dr. Vandenberg had started visiting me. I didn't necessarily know who he was or what was going on. And others, I mean, I had so many specialists coming in and out of the hospital room that didn't exactly. So, but after a while, and he kept coming back. So I, okay, well, there's something here, and so Dr. Vandenberg said, "Well, we're aware of your situation. We've communicated with our team. This is very complicated, but we think you would be an ideal candidate for Mary Free Bed." And my wife, who's also a physician, had additional conversations with Mary Freebad and the specialist at Corwell, and thought, this really is a great fit and the best care that we're going to receive, probably not only in the state of Michigan, but certainly beyond in terms of rehabilitation care. And the ironic thing about it is that Mary Freebad, although they'd been this was the first time they were actually receiving um, patients, ventilator patients, into their own unit. And so I was one of the earlier folks, but I ran into Scott, who was, I believe, leading that department at the time. He said, "No worries." And he was extremely experienced. He said, "You're in great hands." And I was a little bit nervous, not so much about Mary Freebed, but I had now been on a vent for 2 months, 2.5 months. Yeah, for anyone who's never been on an event before, the longer you're on the vent, the more difficult it is to get off the vent. And so I was really having a lot of trouble getting off the vent. And even some of the respiratory therapists and everyone at Corwell, it was really difficult. Well, lo and behold, when I get over to Mary Freebed, they literally had me off the vent, at least in terms of being vent dependent, within 2 days. It was absolutely amazing, the care and the team over there, and just how well the transition went. But sometimes I call it radical hospitality. It's somewhere, and they've been expecting you, and that's what I consider. And that reception is done with such excellence and care and love and dignity. That's what I refer to as radical hospitality, and that's exactly what I received at Mary Free Bed from day one. In addition to getting off the ventilator, which was, or at least ventilator dependent, which was very scary. So I was there for 3 weeks and continued a number of different types of therapies, extremely busy, and then was ultimately discharged in about the third week in January. So that's a little bit of the journey.
Yeah, I mean, and that's great. Such a good overview. So, Molly, I definitely want to go to you and hear more about just that early vent care. But I wonder if Chris and Terry can take this one, like Dr. Vandenberg being over there and rounding and seeing Brad. What's it like that? If any of you can speak to that connection of just like the admission process and how you kind of evaluate who are good fits for rehab, and what's that like? So you guys knew about Brad before he came over, so you knew how to help him from day one. Can either of you maybe take that question?
Yeah, I mean, we have a whole access department, and they coordinate with our physicians to ensure that we have the capacity to take patients, that we have the services, and as Brad talked about, Scott and Molly and that team were well aware and prepped prior to Brad coming on board. But yeah, we work very well as a team before the patient arrives, and then when they arrive during our evaluations, to determine what we're going to need to work on, and then Terry and I work together closely to kind of figure out our plan of attack of how we're gonna implement that. And then we'll do a co-treat with respiratory of, when we're getting a patient off a ventilator or they need the additional respiratory support. We have the support of the respiratory staff right there with us as we're doing something that might be a little bit scary for the patient. And they know, yeah, you've got your respiratory therapist right here. Your physical therapist is there with you. We've got the nurse around, and this might be the first time you're standing up or walking off the ventilator, and that puts a different demand on your need. So, I mean, Terry can talk too about, getting these patients getting dressed and what a taxing experience that is sometimes to get dressed. It's almost sometimes more fatiguing than walking.
Yeah. And Terry, I mean, so sometimes patients might be just used to wearing the gown all the time, but then they come over to Mary Free Bed, and one of the first things you do is we're going to get you dressed. We're going to get you feeling like yourself. What's that like those first couple of days in occupational therapy?
Well, I think Brad has a good perspective on that, but from my perspective, we see people on paper, we do the chart reviews, and you get all the information, expecting maybe what somebody's going to be able to do, but then you don't know until you get there. And our respiratory team is usually the first one that sees people and kind of gets them set up and gives us some information on what we might expect and help with that. But Brad, I don't know. I don't remember if the first time we did a shower, you had the ventilator still, or if they had already weaned you from that. But that first time, it's almost invariable with everybody. That first time that you get up and you take a shower and you get dressed, people are just so exhausted. It's surprising how much work that is for somebody, and especially somebody like you who's kind of a go-getter type person. It's hard for you. It's hard for those type of people to give yourself rest breaks and accommodate for some of that. So it's so taxing overall. And there's some things that we do. We try to, obviously we teach different strategies and that sort of thing. But it's really difficult those first couple of days.
And that is so funny that you mentioned that, Terry, because I mean, now even as we're having the conversation, things are coming back to me a little bit. One in terms of the difference when you're in the ICU, you're in your gown all day. When you get over Mary Free Bed, oh no, there's no laying around in your PJs. Everyone's getting dressed every morning, but it's really, really exhausting. I mean, because I was so weak there, but I literally could not lift my arms. I couldn't lift my legs. I mean, I literally was, for the most part, when I got to Mary Free Bed, couldn't do anything. And so just being able to sit up or get into the chair from the bed was extremely exhausting. But, working with the team, and the confidence that you all instill in in the patients and myself, certainly gives me the confidence to do it. But then you also mentioned about respiratory therapy being there, physical therapy. So you're also surrounded with the team, so that you feel safe, even when you're being pushed to really extend yourselves. And so that was really coming back to me, even as you were saying that, both in terms of no one lays around in their PJs, but also how do you bring the team around just in case to ensure that everything goes well, because we are being pushed. It should be.
And Molly, so your team really pushes, but in a safe and healthy way to get people off the ventilator. Tell us a little bit about that, because it seemed like I heard it was really quick that you guys got him off and got him not dependent on that.
Yeah, well, he had done a lot of that hard work before he even got here, with strengthening and with the diaphragm paralysis. We knew we had some hurdles, but we also were able to provide support for him at night in a non-invasive way. So that way we could keep his lungs recruited and kind of optimize his therapy during the day. And so that was one of the hurdles that we had. And so once we were able to do that, we were able to support his ventilatory system and make sure that he was getting the most out of his therapy.
Yeah, that's great. So, Brad, how about those first few days there at Mary Free Bed? It is kind of a shock to the system about how hard you're working. You've been kind of talking about that, but what was it like when you started seeing some of the progress? Was there certain goals that you started hitting right away that really, made that difference?
Well, so yeah, I mean, so one of the things, I mean, when you first when you first get there, you don't 100% know what to expect. And I come from kind of a medical background and had worked in healthcare, but you wake up and the first thing you see on the television is your full schedule, and it says, OT, PT, speech there, and so that's just the morning, and then it repeats again in the afternoon. So it's like, okay, it's on, let's go. And so I come from yeah, again, a pretty, healthy and physical background, and I'd always played sports and lifted weights. So I kind of had that mentality anyways in terms of being able to push the body and generally speaking, understanding what the body could do. It's just a question of, in this new reality, how far would I be able to go? And so working with Chris was absolutely fantastic. I mean, we really did have I think we had it dialed in quite well in terms of a program, let's go, the exercises, and because I would, push myself pretty hard. Having the respiratory there was really because every now and then I did have to take a break. There's no doubt about that. So
Yeah, and I think even I recall that we would have to say, okay, Brad, it's important that you listen to what Terry says and let's pace yourself because you're like, I got to get this perfect on this test. I need to score 56 or not feeling like I've achieved my goals. And so, I mean, again, motivated patients are great, but we also have to, ensure that we don't burn you out in the 1 hour that I have you, because then you still have to work with Terry and you still have, your speech therapy and, you got so many things that are going on throughout the day. It's important that one discipline alone doesn't ruin your whole day. And I would also say too, with Molly, I mean, just the fact that we know that the patients are getting good quality sleep, and that they have that respiratory support at night. We know that in the morning they're going to feel well rested and then they're ready to take on another day. Sometimes that's not the case if you don't have a respiratory team, because then patients aren't sleeping well at night and they're just absolutely exhausted the next day. So
Exactly. We have a lot of resources here for that. And Brad, you were here, like you said, at the beginning of our vent program. Respiratory came here in the end of 2017. And so this was a newer program. And to see patients like you that have that drive and be able to provide that service to you it's a fills you up kind of thing. And so it was a really good experience for our whole team to see how quickly you gained your strength and we were able to get you off the vet and then further on to be able to decannulate and get the trach out, which I know was a big moment for you.
yeah. Again, even as we're talking about this, one of the things that really sticks out in my mind is that the level of communication and education that you all were doing at the same time that you were providing, or really partnering with me, on my care. Because, what you just mentioned now, Chris, in terms of the importance of having good sleep and the importance of, saving a little bit of the tank for the next therapy session. Those were all the things that you're actually communicating to me at the moment in time. And so those are the things, when you're communicating with patients and, you know, um, it gives us a better understanding of the why as opposed to just coming in the room and just doing. And I mean, to some extent, it'd be so much easier just to come in there and do it and not explain the why. But as a patient, having the why behind what we're doing and how we're doing it really resonates. And I think I think it's really helpful. I think it's obviously a dignified approach, but I also think it's helpful in terms of, the overall recovery process in and of itself. And I think even once we are discharged from Mary Free Bed, whether on an outpatient basis or, completely from care in and of itself, be this thing, um, I think it still sits with us in terms of where and how to pace ourselves going forward in life.
And you're talking about that discharge and going home. Like, we're talking about this conversation now because it's kind of right around the same time. You went home in January, so you were in the hospitals during the holidays. What was that like? Like, being away from home in that time when that's all that the holidays is all about, is like celebrating with your families and that kind of time. How did we at Mary Free Bed kind of help make that work for you more to just give that experience?
Oh, absolutely. So I officially was admitted into a Mary Free Bed on December 26th. So right after, I mean, the day after Christmas. So it was actually kind of one of
5
my
years, yeah.
Christmas. yeah, my Christmas wish, to be admitted. Not many people say that, but yeah, that was my Christmas wish because I knew it was going to be the best care. And so you mentioned kind of being away from home, but it wasn't exactly away from home. One, because, so many family members you can see there, my wife and my daughter on the left-hand side and her boyfriend, they came to Mary Free Bed, and to the hospital. And we still celebrated the Christmases and the anniversaries and birthday parties, and we had gifts. And Mary Free Bed was extreme. Not only were they accommodating, in many instances they also participated, and we had a lot of fun together. And so, even though I wasn't at my residence, that the house that I grew up in, I didn't feel as if I was not at home, because I really did feel like I was at home because family came to the Mary Free Bed. I also felt, you start to become family overall Mary Free Bed team. And that's really what it's about, being with people who care about you and people you care about. And so it wasn't really one of those woe is me types of situation whatsoever. We still had a really good celebration of the holidays.
So let's transition now. So you've discharged to home. We helped you prepare for that. Tell us about the couple years since then, and then leading up to now, the recent LDI leadership workshop where you came and spoke. Like, how has the past 5 years been at home and just your recovery since then?
Yeah, so when I was discharged in mid-January of 2019, I was still off from from work for until the follow for the next essentially 6 7 months. But at the same time, COVID also came in like a lion, spring of 2020. So I remember actually being in the married free bed, kind of watching some television during my short, brief stints in between therapies. And I was watching about a disease or a pandemic coming out of China. They didn't even necessarily have a name for it yet, and it was COVID. And so shortly after in March, I'd just been discharged and was doing outpatient therapy. Everything shut down for COVID. And so and then, so I was still, because obviously being critical care providers, was still able to come and get my outpatient services at Mary Free Bed. And then that ended probably right before the summer. But I'd gotten so much training and information and learning from Mary Free Bed, from a physical therapy, occupational therapy, as well as just how to pace my breathing, that I was able to continue a lot of my exercises and therapies on my own at the house. We are fortunate in that we have, just kind of a minimal gym, some barbells and just a treadmill, at the house. So I'm able to continue to do that. And Chris gave me some great exercises to move, all sorts of stuff. So I was exhausted. So I continued doing that. And then basically in August of 2020, I did return to Rockford Construction. So construction, similar to healthcare, was also recognized as a critical industry. And so we were able to work essentially through the pandemic. And so I was able to, come back into the office after almost a year of being off work and started to slowly transition. And so essentially the last, you know, 4 years, 5 years have been really, really well. I think probably I've continued to get stronger and my endurance has continued to build. I mentioned earlier on about the fact that my left vocal cord was paralyzed and they had replaced it with an artificial vocal cord, so I'm able to speak and I'm on just a couple medications, so I feel like I'm essentially quite healthy and most certainly extremely blessed. I know that not everyone that has my situation or even encounters the healthcare inpatient or rehabilitation, everyone has a different outcome, but I think some of the common experiences, and I mentioned this during the leadership conference with all the Mary Free Bed leaders, is that the one common thing that we all do have, particularly from being our experience, being in touch with Mary Free Bed, is that sense of hope, and freedom. And I think that that's the one commonality that all of the patients are able to experience and be discharged with and continue to experience it. Essentially fostered, I really believe, in the leadership and in the caring and in the expertise that's at Mary Free Bed.
Well, awesome. Well, Brad, I just want to thank you so much for sharing your story. And Molly, Chris, and Terry, it's been so great, to kind of connect like this. Molly, Chris, or Terry, any of you guys just want to share, like, what's it like sitting here and connecting again with Brad and hearing him share his story after all these years?
Well, one thing that I would say is I remember, well, Brad and I are similar age, and our kids are similar age. And we would talk about that. And, I think we see as people who work at Free Bed that this could happen to anybody. It could happen to us, and hopefully we treated you the way that you would treat us. I'm glad you had a good experience, and you said that this is all new to you, so hopefully we made it a comfortable experience for you for your rehab as well.
Yes, absolutely.
And I would say sometimes we have patients that will come back, I don't know, after a month, and it's exciting to see them after a month. But Brad, to see you after 5 years and know that you're continuing to thrive is just, this just really fills that bucket, because this was a new program, and we at Free Bed, it was something new that we weren't quite sure how it was going to go, and we had a great group of supportive staff, and it was a pleasure to work with Terry and Molly and all those nurses. But we were a little bit nervous going into it, because again, it was a newer program. But Brad was such a great participant. He was so motivated, and you can just see the energy that he has now. And then certainly he had that excitement and energy when he was a patient. So it's just wonderful to see you still doing so well after 5 years. It was a rough time.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you all, Brad, so much for jumping on this conversation. Molly, Chris, and Terry, thank you guys all so much. Brad,
one quick thing, just I mentioned this during the leadership, because of COVID, 2020, when I was really discharged and everything, it was really weird because, like you said, most people will come back after a month and they'll thank the staff. And because of COVID, I didn't really have that same type of opportunity. And so being at the Mary Free Bed leadership group, and all the leaders were there, and even today, being able to just thank you all so much for the love and the care and the restoration of hope and dignity. I just can't tell you how much it means to myself, how much it means to our family, and just to be able to continue to serve. And being on the Mary Free Bed board since 2022, I truly believe is hopefully one of the ways that I can, give back and say thank you as well. So I really, really appreciate the opportunity to serve.
Awesome. Well, everybody, thank you guys so much for this conversation. It's been so fun to reconnect on this. You've been watching another live stream, a Where Are They Now series from Mary Free Bed. You can just go to maryfreebed.com to get more information about our programs. Everybody, thank you so much for watching, and stay well.